Hi, I'm Liv, and welcome back to the Book Nook. Hey guys, so it's time for the fourth and final video in the little mini-series of Norse reading list books, which I realise is primarily what my Norse member videos have been about, and that's okay. In true me fashion, I kind of promised or planned more than I could realistically deliver. Who's surprised? Not me! I'm planning on trying to squeeze 2 more videos in before the end of Norsemember. One will be on the runes, and the second will be sort of on more general kind of access to Viking and Norse shit. But let's crack on with this video, which, as I say, is part 4 and final of the Norse reading list, and that is a Viking or Norse based fiction. So I went from thinking there was fuck all Norse and Viking related fiction to realising there's a shit ton. So I'm not going to go through all of them because we don't want to be here for an hour, because nobody loves watching me that much, not even me. I mean, especially not me, not even me, especially. Anyway, but I'm going to go through some of the kind of more popular or more well-known ones, and then a few that basically are the ones I'm interested in. So the first one is the Last Kingdom series, or the Saxon Stories by Bernard Cornwell, and I think there are now 13 of these. Some of you may have also watched The Last Kingdom on television, which was based on that. I know my dad started watching it and really enjoyed it. So those are a series that follow Alfred the Great and his descendants through the eyes of Uhtred, who's an English boy born into the aristocracy of 9th century Northumberland, who's captured by the Danes and taught the Viking ways. So it's probably not like the most Viking-y of Viking fiction, because it is about kind of this English guy who's captured by the Vikings. But I've never read them myself, but I am going to give them a go, and I do know somebody who has read them and really enjoyed them, and as I say, my dad used to watch the TV series, so that's your first one. Then we have the Raven series by Giles Crichton. Now I think the Raven series, or the first one, Blood Eye, I believe was Giles Crichton's debut novel as well. And that's about a young man called Osric who has like one blood red eye, and he's like a bit of a simple guy, just living his life, and then he basically ends up becoming a Viking, renamed Raven, and he must become a killer to survive. I mean, that's pretty Viking. So that's a series of 3 books, meant to be very good. I've got them all on my Kindle, and I will get around to them one day. Then one that's kind of a bit different, and that's S Byatt's Ragnarok. Now this is about a young girl who's evacuated to the English countryside during the Second World War, and she's given a book of the Norse myths, and as a way to kind of like try and make sense of stuff, or I don't know, just given something to do, here's a book to read, and stuff happens. I don't really know much more than that. There's an edition published by Canongate as part of their canons, as part of their kind of myth series. You guys know how much I love Canongate, particularly the canons. And that myth series includes Ali Smith's Girl Meets Boy, you know I love it, Margaret Atwood's Penelope Ad, and I think David Grossman's Lion Meets Honey, Honey, Lion, Lion, Honey, Lions and Honey, something to do with lions and honey. I have never read, to my knowledge, any AS by it, and Ragnarok is one that I think I'm going to definitely try and get to, probably during the end of this month, because I have been reading more the non-fiction stuff and I think I need something different. Then we have 4 books by Joanne Harris by another name, and the first 2 is The Gospel of Loki and The Testament of Loki, which are kind of the sort of the story of the Norse gods from the point of view of Loki, set in the modern world, and that's kind of all I know about them. The other thing I know is that there's sort of a prequel to the next 2, which are Runemarks and Runelight, which is, in these ones, sort of the Norse gods are banned, any mention of them is banned, their stories and the magic is banned, and there's this new religion called the Order that's in charge. And then there's a young girl named Maddie who has a rune mark on her hand, so she's kind of shunned because like that's a link with like the old gods and magic. And then she discovers that she's got skills and she's got a friend called One Eye. Who could that be? And then as the Order moves north, Maddie has to, I think, sort of fight them and discover her powers and stuff. So sort of Norse-related fiction, all about the Norse gods and all the magics, set in the modern world. I've heard mixed things, but I'm definitely going to give it a go because it sounds like a merging of things that will be my jam. Then we have a series by another author that I've never read that a lot of my fantasy-loving friends say is fantastic, and that's the Shattered Sea series by Joe Abercrombie. This is the one that's half a king, half a world, half a war. Is that the right way around? Yes. And it tells the story of a guy called Yavi who's born with a crippled hand, and he struggles to live up to his father's expectations. He's never going to be king. He's a kind of bookish guy. But then his dad and his brother are both killed, and he has to become king, sits on the black chair, which kind of sits between gods and men, and has to be a king. I am potentially slightly worried about kind of the representation of disability in there, the fact that he's just described as born with a crippled hand, and the fact that it's called like half a king and half a whatever, and it says something like he has to rule as only half a. I'm a bit like, is that gonna be good? If anyone's read it, hit me up, let me know. Is the representation in that kind of dodgy, or is it okay? Then a series that I definitely want to get to because I think it's going to be a bit of easy reading, and that's Rick Riordan's Magnus Chase series. It's Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. We've got Sword of Summer, Hammer of Thor, Ship of the Dead. In kind of YA Rick Riordan style, Percy Jackson type vibes, because it's the same dude. Magnus is an orphan 16-year-old boy who finds out he's the son of a god, and I think he's also... so he's a demigod, and he's also dead, I think. And all sorts of adventures happen when Norse shit kicks off. Then here comes Neil Gaiman again. It's happening. American Gods. Now this is one that when I read it, it was kind of pre me getting into the Vikings and Norse stuff, and I didn't really realise, like, I knew it was about all these different gods from all sorts of different mythologies and stuff, but I didn't twig that Mr. Wednesday is based on Odin, and there's literally a character in there called Loki. I mean, Loki Lysmith. I wonder who he is. So if you haven't heard of American Gods, it's about a dude who's about to get out of prison and his wife's killed in a car crash, and he comes out of prison and he's all sad and he meets Mr. Wednesday, who says he's like a former king and a former god, and yeah, former king of America and a former god, and there's this whole big war brewing between all sorts of gods and different kind of magics and what have you going on, and Shadow gets brought into it. TV adaptation's meant to be quite good. I didn't love it when I read it because I felt that it had so much going on and that it just was trying to do too much. But if you're a Neil Gaiman fan, you're probably going to like it. Neil Gaiman appearing again, though, in Odd and the Frost Giants, which was a well-booked title back in 2008, and it's about a young orphaned boy, it's always young orphaned boys, who finds and releases a trapped bear and some other animals, and it turns out all of these animals are actually the Norse gods trapped in animal bodies because some frost giant has taken over Asgard, and Odd has to help find Thor's hammer and free the gods and save Asgard. Another one that I'd not heard of, but I'm really, really intrigued by, is Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton, he of Jurassic Park fame. It's a dinosaur, my god. Now this is kind of based on two things. The first is based on the true story of a 10th century Arab Muslim called Ahmed ibn Fadlan, who was a traveller who came into contact with Vikings, and a lot of his kind of accounts of meeting the Vikings and travelling with Vikings are used in historical texts and history books and things like that. And it's also based on Beowulf. Apparently this book came about because one of Michael Crichton's mates was giving a talk called The Bores of Literature, and he said that Beowulf was boring, and Michael Crichton said, no, it's not boring, it just needs to be told right, and I'm going to show you. So he kind of wove these two things in about Ibn Fadlan, who meets these Vikings, the Volgars, and becomes the Viking and becomes this prophesized 13th warrior. And this was also turned into a film called The 13th Warrior in 1999, starring Antonio Banderas. Then another book by yet another author that I didn't know had any Norse connection at all, and that's The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul by Douglas Adams. Now this is the second in the Dirk Gently series, apparently. I do not know what my cat is doing, but it doesn't sound good. All I'm going to give you from this one is, when the Norse god Thor blows a hole through Heathrow Airport in a frustrated attempt to catch the 337 to Oslo, Detective Dirk Gently finds himself in the midst of a very strange case indeed. It sounds peak Douglas Adams with some Norse myth thrown in. I mean, what more could you want? Then another one that I'm really super intrigued by, and I'm going to get myself a hard copy, and that's The Broken Sword by Poul Anderson. Now this is a book about a guy called Skaflock who has to find a sword in order to save Yggdrasil, and it's all based on the Norse myths, and there's elves and there's dwarves and there's trolls and there's all sorts going on. But the really interesting thing to me about this one is this was published in the same year as The Fellowship of the Ring, and they both came out at the same time, and they both kind of deal with some sort of Scandinavian history and the Anglo-Saxon stuff. You know, Tolkien based the names of his dwarves on the names of dwarves from the Poetic Eddas, and was all into the Anglo-Saxon shit. All of his runes are kind of based on the Futhark runes, but only one of them really took off. Michael Moorcock and a lot of other authors have said that The Broken Sword is better than The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm not saying that because I've not read The Broken Sword, but some people say it, okay? Don't take it up with me, take it up with Michael Moorcock. So it sounds like it's a bit of a kind of, not lost, but probably underappreciated fantasy novel that's very, very Norse, and I'm very, very excited. Then another book by another author that I have not really read any of their stuff before, and I didn't know that this existed, and that is The 8 Days of Luke by Diana Wynne Jones, author of Howl's Moving Castle, which I have over there, but I haven't read yet. Naughty, naughty. I've seen floating around a quote that Neil Gaiman said that he had to rewrite bits of American God because he realised that he'd basically just rewritten 8 Days of Luke. I don't know whether that's true or not. But it's a book about a kid who makes friends with a guy called Luke. I wonder who they could be. and he discovers the Norse gods, basically. So it's another book about the Norse gods aimed at younger readers, and I feel like if I'd read this one when I was a kid, my Viking obsession probably would have started much, much earlier. I'm trying not to race through them to the point that you don't get the actual information and that I'm just kind of running through them, but there's so many that I want to mention. So another one that I have mentioned briefly before is Arnulf Wolfblood, a Viking saga by S Pedersen. This is one by a Danish author. There's a series of 6 books, I think, published in Denmark. The first has been published and translated into English, and it's about a young man who learns what it means to be a Viking. Based on research, it's very, very Viking, saga-like, going to be really, really good, and I'm really excited to read that one. Then we have A Gathering of Ravens by Scott Oden, which I am currently reading and I'm kind of on the fence about. But it's about an orc named Grimnir, who is a Skraeling. He's the last of his kind, and it's in a world where Christianity is taking over from the old gods, the Norse gods. The Norse influence is kind of waning, and Grimnir is on a hunt for revenge against some guy, and he takes a young Kristian as a hostage to kind of show him the way to England. And yeah, it's a really cool idea, but the writing I'm not 100% on board with, and I think the phrase that jumps to mind is trying a little bit too hard to be kind of Viking, angry, but we shall see. Another one that I have read and I've seen floating all over the Norse-Vember tag on Twitter is Northern Wrath by Tilda Cold Holt. Now this one, it's different cast of characters, but it's mainly following Hilda, Einar and Siv, who are all from the same village, and it's happening as kind of the bonds on Muspelheim are weakening and the magic of the runes is weakening, and all of these characters are kind of play different roles in kind of trying to keep the Norse magics going. It's got great characters and it's got great potential, but what I would say is some of the time frames got a little bit muddled, and I've spoken before about writers who know more than you know, and how well they do it, that you know what you need to know and don't know what you don't know, and that sort of thing. And I'm not sure it's gotten quite right in this book, but I did really enjoy it. I do want to find out what happens next, and I got a sad when the thing happened. Then we have The Gatewatch by Joshua Gillingham. Joshua Gillingham has been all over the Norse-Vember hashtag because this book is very popular. He's also just announced the sequel, The Everspring, which will be coming next April, I believe. It's about a load of dudes who want to go off and become troll hunters, but they get captured by a load of dwarves and taken hostage, and it feels very kind of like Hobbity from the description. They're called Thorin Tentrees and his closest companions, and it sounds very Tolkien-esque. Gillingham has also launched a Kickstarter this month for a Viking-based card game called Althingi, which looks really, really cool. I have backed it, and I'll put the link in the description below if you want to check that out as well. Then we have Children by Bjorn Larsen. This is a book dealing with Thor's children, but in this version, Thor is an alcoholic bastard who's destroyed everything, and his children kind of have to pick up the pieces, and it sounds pretty dope. Then one that looks really interesting is The Wolf in the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky. This is set in 1000 AD, and is a young Inuit shaman girl who meets a Viking warrior, and they kind of become these unwilling allies as like a war breaks out, and just those merging of these two things sounds really cool. Plus it's got a wolf in the title, so I'm sold. Then one which I really want to read soon is Queens of the Weird by Timandra Whitecastle. This is an interesting look about, it's a half-giant shield maiden and her kind of band of shield maidens who are all older now. They are shield mothers, but then the main character's shield sister comes along and says, my daughter is stuck in a siege, can you help me? And these shield maidens have to kind of get the band back together and go out and help save her, and it's a kind of interesting sounding look at female warriors in Viking culture, and it just sounds dope. I need to stop saying dope, I can't pull dope off. Then one more I'm going to mention. There are a few that I'm not mentioning because I'm running out of time, but this last one I want to mention is called The Saga of the Iron Dragon by Robert Croser. This is a 3-book series. Now, are you ready for this? This is about a group of humans from 23rd century Earth, where humanity has been hunted to extinction by aliens, and I don't think you are ready for this. They accidentally time travel back to Viking Age Scandinavia, have to become Vikings, and teach the Vikings how to make a spaceship to get them back to... it sounds bonkers as shit, and I'm here for it. Time travelling Vikings. As I say, I realise this video has been very high energy and throwing lots at you, but I was kind of really pleasantly surprised about how much Norse or Viking related fiction there is out there, and I wanted to share as much of it as I could with you. I will put a link in the description to my blog post, which kind of has got all of these resources in one place, where there will be more Norse fiction that I haven't mentioned on here that you can check out as well if you would like. So that's a shit ton of books that are Norse or Viking based fiction. there's got to be something in there for you. There will, of course, inevitably be ones that I've missed. There will be loads more floating around on the Norsevember tag on Twitter that will be mentioned that I will have just totally missed because I am only human. So check out the Norsevember tag on Twitter and Instagram and all that for more books as well. Have a little look in the description where I will link to Joshua Gillingham's All Thingy Kickstarter backing thingy, the link. Yep, words. All of the books mentioned in here and a link to my blog post where I've catalogued everything else, and other books that I haven't mentioned in here will be on that list as well. So I hope in these 4 videos you have found something Norsey to read and that you've enjoyed them. I've very much enjoyed making them. As I say, 2 more videos to come that I will squeeze in before the end of the month, and that's all I've got time for today. Goodbye and thank you!